Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people get exactly what they ask for, and the stories are so satisfying. And in today's episode, OP teaches her rude, power-tripping entitled boss a lesson that she'll never forget. Guys, I hope you enjoy the lineup of stories today. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and as always, you can send your stories to this email right here. This happened years ago when I used to work at an office at a front desk one summer during college. A video I saw today just reminded me of the incident. So one day, this lady comes in to pay a fine. The woman was very rude and angry about her fine. Now I don't know the particulars because all I did was work the front desk. So the woman decides to try a little malicious compliance on me. Her fine was about $250, and she said she was gonna be paying in quarters. Now I knew I had to comply since we're supposed to accept any legal tender. So I take the bags from her but realized that she had unrolled every single roll of quarters. She said that since we want to waste her time with a stupid fine, she will also waste our time. I tried to explain and beg her not to do this to me since I had nothing to do with her fine. The woman didn't care. She said we were all evil. And that's when she smirked and said, "One band, one sound." And that's when I realized that there was no reasoning with her. I was furious, but I began counting one by one. We were interrupted by multiple phone calls and customers, so I had to restart a few times. It was at this point the woman realized how long this would really take. The woman tried to stack the quarters to help me count faster, but I told her no, that was my job. I told her that I couldn't just take word that the stacks were correct, so I had to do it one by one like she asked for. Two other people came, paid, and left while she was still standing there. The woman starts to get mad, saying that I was wasting her time on purpose. I told her we don't have a coin counter, so this is how long it's actually gonna take. The woman then threatens to call police. And that's when I tell her, go ahead, I'll just have to restart when the police get here, so I can be sure to get an accurate count. So after someone else came and left, she finally snapped. The woman whips out her credit card and she paid. And as she was leaving, she snatched one of the bags off the counter, but the handle gave away, spilling all the coins all over the floor. The woman scooped up what she could, but she left a good chunk. It was at that point I told her she was littering, and she flips me off. I then got a broom and swept up the coins. There was about 192 quarters on the floor. When I was leaving work, I found some more in the parking lot. Now, it wasn't a whole lot of money, but for a broke college student, it was great. Guys, I always love a good post where people decide to pay with an absurd amount of change to be petty. And then it backfires. Like, it always backfires. I've never really understood that though. Like, what are people trying to achieve when they bring in $300 in pennies? Like, you just spent all your time getting these coins and I'm paid by the freaking hour, so you can't really waste my time. And hey, consider that $48 in quarters the woman dropped to be a-hole tax because she definitely deserved it. And hopefully she'll never do it again. So after I graduated college, I went back to work at my high school job at a large auto parts chain. I have a few stories of malicious compliance from there because it was a miserable place to work at with miserable management. But I think this one takes the cake. I lived about 15 minutes from the store and I would routinely work 1 to 2 hours past my shift to help the manager close up and tally cash sale receipts. On top of that, I would take out the trash, prep, and stage the first deliveries for the next morning, as well as sweep up the storefront. I don't mind doing these things because I did get a little overtime out of it. I also got in good graces of the manager, or so I thought, and being that even though my drive home was short, staying a little late and letting traffic die down was completely fine with me. One morning, I walked in at about 9:07 when my shift was scheduled to start at 9 a.m. I didn't see what the big issue was since I'd been staying late every day for months helping him close the store, but apparently on this day, he took issue with it. Now that would have been fine if he'd said something along the lines of, "Hey OP, you're late, and I know you worked long yesterday, but let's still get here on time, okay?" But that's not what the guy said. My boss flies off the handle and he went on about needing me to work my schedule, and that we have schedules for a reason, and you need to be at work for the schedule I made you. Well, needless to say, since I'd been staying late for months to help him close the store, despite it not being on my schedule, this rubbed me the wrong way. So I convinced myself that instead of causing a scene and yelling, I would do exactly what he said. So 5:30 rolls around and we closed at 6. I stood at the computer until it hit 5:30 exactly, and that's when I clocked out and start walking towards the door. That's when my manager says, "Hey, where you going?" I tell him I'm going home. He then says, "What? Why? Who's gonna help me close the store tonight? To which I say, I don't know, but you made it very clear that I was to work my schedule. So I get off at 5:30. It's now 5:30 and I'm going home. That's when I walked out. The next morning, I get there at 8:55 and I just stood in front of my computer until it hit 9 o'clock. If the phone's ringing, too bad, my shift hasn't started. Deliveries need to go out, sorry, I'm not on the clock yet. I then clocked in at 9 o'clock and then clocked out at 5:30. The same conversation as the day before about who was going to help him close. The third morning I walk in, he waits for me to clock in and then pulls me aside to talk to me. He says to me, I think we can overlook a few minutes in the morning if you stay and help me close. I then say to him, oh, interesting, I thought I was supposed to just work my schedule like you said. To which my manager says, yeah, well, I guess we can overlook that. I had very few problems with this manager after that little exchange. Plenty more where that came from. You know what? I'm actually surprised the manager basically admitted his mistake, guys, even if he didn't outright say it. Like, to me, it honestly sounds like he might have been having a bad morning that day and just took it out on OP because everybody has those bad mornings, right? Okay, so this story harkens back to ye olden days when Blockbuster and Hollywood Video were things to do on a family-friendly Friday, and cell phones were still something that most people didn't really consider necessary, aka the 90s. I took a job at a video store near my house. It was a small family-owned store with 3 different branches in town. The job was wonderful. I loved movies and games, and it was close to my residence and school. I even got free video rentals and a discount from the sub shop next door. The video store was located in a beautiful old building from the 1920s. It had marble stairs and a really amazing cage elevator that led up to the storage and employee lounge. This is important for later. The job was perfect for me. The hours were flexible, the pay was decent, but the one drawback to this was my supervisor. Let's call her Amanda because that was her name. Seriously, screw Amanda. Amanda was on the older side, and she seemed to not be content with how her life had turned out. As a result, she took all of her frustrations out on anyone she could, especially those people who she worked with who happened to be younger. If you were a college student like myself, you earned a special extra helping of disdain from her. I mean, really, how dare you decide to actually have aspirations of making more than $7.50 an hour? Now, while I'm generally fairly tolerant to people like Amanda, she went the extra mile to annoy me as much as humanly possible. She was bitter, she was mean, she was petty, she did anything and everything she could, just to be plain unpleasant. She wasn't even nice to customers. The only upside to this attitude was that she didn't let Karen customers get away with their Karen-ness. I might have been able to take more if she happened to be particularly knowledgeable or good at her job. She was neither, and only appeared to have the job because of good old nepotism. See, she was the daughter-in-law of the owner. She knew nothing about movies, games, or gaming systems, or anything we rented or sold. When a customer had a question, she would pawn them off on another employee. When she had a problem with computers, who did she call to fix it? Me. When there was a delivery, who did she call? Me. When stock needed to be dragged up to the stockroom, that would be me again. Any unpleasant task that came up, she would always try to give it to me. Generally, she hid in the back watching TV or talking on the phone, which did tie up the store's landline for literally hours. No one could call in. She would do anything and everything she could to avoid doing her actual job. When I brought up Amanda to Ken, the owner, he simply sighed and gave a pained look and asked me to just try to bear with it and stay out of her way if I could. That's when I got the distinct impression that Ken didn't really care much for her either, but she was his daughter-in-law. He did try his best to make sure that I wasn't scheduled to work with her, but at least once a week, I had to work with this paragon of kindness and light. One day, I was on the phone with a customer discussing the late fee on their account when Amanda wanted to make a call. This resulted in Amanda ripping me a new one in front of the entire store of people. It was a Saturday, and we were packed to the rafters. Amanda was yelling so loudly that the woman on the phone asked me if we were being robbed and whether she should call the police. Before I could answer, Amanda yanks the phone out of my hand and she slammed it into the cradle. She then says to me, "You are never ever to be on that phone. Do you understand me?" While I was desperately aching to headbutt her, I bit my tongue, took a deep breath, and counted to 10. When that didn't work, I counted to 20, then 50, and instead of telling her I hoped she'd be ravaged by rabid wolverines, I simply smiled and said, "All right." Now this seemed to annoy her even more than if I'd gotten angry. She storms back to the office, and I took a stream of customers, all of whom asked me if I was okay, and one even offered suggestions on how to dispose of a body. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I did appreciate the suggestions, but I had plenty of my own ideas. And while evisceration with a pair of safety scissors might be a fulfilling immediate solution, probably wasn't good for my lifetime goals. Unless those goals involved a jail cell and becoming overly acquainted by a thick woman with one eyebrow named Big Betty. Instead, I checked it off in my big book of voodoo curses and hoped I'd have a chance to pay Amanda back for her thoughtful gesture of embarrassing me in front of half the metropolitan area. Still, there were a few more pieces to be laid out for my malicious compliance, and Amanda wouldn't disappoint me. So the next piece came perhaps a month later. I had been at work for about 7 hours of my 9-hour shift, and I'd only seen Amanda once, and that's when she left the store. Considering I had only 2 hours left on my shift and hadn't taken a break, I really needed to go to the bathroom. I told my coworker that I was just heading to the restroom. This was, however, apparently not in keeping with Amanda's views for the universe. Amanda actually began to bang and kick the bathroom door, demanding I come out immediately. That's when I took my time, washed my hands, adjusted my hair, and calmly walked out of the bathroom. While she began to scream, I ignored her, and I walked up to the front of the store and took the cart of movies to be reshelved. Amanda then grabs the front of the cart, and she swiped the movies off the top, sending them crashing to the floor. She then informed me of my questionable parentage, told me that I like to passionately hug mothers, and that I was a female dog. Now really, I had no idea about any of these things about myself. I thought that all the time I was just your regular, everyday college student. I could have probably gotten on television if I knew how unique I was sooner. That's when Amanda told me that under no uncertain terms was I ever to leave the floor while I was on the clock, even to go to the bathroom. Again, I summoned an inner calm that would have made Gandhi proud. I then forced a smile and nodded and said, "All right." Now, while I did seem calm on the outside, I had made up my mind that I would have my chance. No matter how small, I would have my moment. So that shining moment came on a lazy and blissful quiet morning. As it was morning, it was just gonna be me and Amanda. Hopefully she would stay in the office and I wouldn't have to deal with her at all. When I came in, there were workmen in the back working on the elevator. One of the guys comes up to me and tells me that he needs a part, and he would be back tomorrow to finish up the work. That was annoying, as I would now have to schlep armfuls of heavy tapes up the stairs, but it wasn't the end of the world. The light of my life arrived a few hours later without a word to anybody. I was standing in the front, putting Be Kind rewind stickers on a batch of new arrivals, when I noticed Amanda through the back door, getting into the elevator. After the man told me he needed a part, it didn't even occur to me that the elevator had power on, and I had a moment of amusement, thinking Amanda was gonna have to take the hated stairs. She was above all lazy. However, it seemed the elevator did indeed have power, and it did work. At least it worked just enough to go up half a floor and then stop. The elevator was close enough to the upper floor that climbing out onto the floor was impossible, and it was far enough from the lower floor that climbing out was impossible. It was at that point I couldn't believe my eyes. Malicious compliance activated. I couldn't entirely see Amanda as she tried to open the door and get out, but I could hear her. The sounds of frustration increased until I heard the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. It was Amanda calling my name. And that's when a slow smile, reminiscent of the Grinch, curved my lips. I walked to the very edge of the sales floor and I called out, "Yes?" Amanda says, "Hey, the elevator's stuck. Can you open the door from your side?" To which I say, "I don't know. I can't see it from here." That's when Amanda huffed in annoyance and she says, "Well, get over here and try to open it." To which I say, "I can't do that, Amanda." And she says, "Why the F not?" That's when I say, I'm not allowed to leave the floor while I'm on the clock under any circumstances. She says, "Are you effing kidding me?" Hey, you said it yourself. Since I value my job, I can't possibly go against orders. That's when a stream of curses comes from the locked and stuck elevator. I'm pretty sure I'm still not old enough for all the things I heard that day. Amanda then says, "Call maintenance. The number should be in the office." At that, I tried to sound as innocent and sympathetic as I could possibly manage, while also trying not to burst out laughing. I say to her, "I can't do that either. I'd have to leave the floor to go to the office." To that, Amanda says, "You think you're so effing funny, don't you?" I say, "I don't know what you mean." She then says, "Call Ken. I know you know his number." I tell her, well, I would, but you told me I'm not allowed to use the phone, remember? Amazingly at that, there were no curses, there were no screams, not even one word telling me that my parents were never married. It was silent. I think for the first time, she realized that she actually might be in a little trouble. She was stuck in a position entirely of her own making, with no way out of it for the foreseeable future. Amanda's silent for a bit, and then she goes, OP, please just get me out of here. I tell her, I'm sorry Amanda, I'm just following orders. Well, since being nice to me didn't work, all the pretense of niceness was dropped as she proceeded to inform me of all my imagined faults and those of my parents, friends, and any other relations I might have or think to have in the future. And then Amanda sealed her fate. She yelled at me that I was fired. Now in truth, I really only planned on letting her stew for a few minutes, but after that, I'm thinking, nah. I then say to her, oh, I'm fired? Okay, I guess I'll head home then. Oh, I should also let you know that Bill called. He said he'd be in at 7 o'clock instead of 5. He's gotta pick up his brother from the airport, so I guess you'll be in there for a while. I hope you've got a book or something. And that's when Amanda absolutely loses it. She screams, what? Are you effing kidding me? How the F do you think you can do this to me? When I get out of here, I'm gonna come kick you when you're effing blah 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 blah. And that's when I tell her, wow, okay, yeah, you have fun with that. Have a good one. I'll leave my name tag and shirt on the front desk. That's when Amanda screams, wait, but I tell her, bye, don't worry, I'll lock up on my way out and I'll put up a sign so people will know we're closed. She then screams at me, wait, she didn't mean it, and to come back. That's when I walked up to the front, wrote a sign out that we were closed until 7 p.m. due to unforeseen circumstances. And the very last thing I heard from Amanda before I opened the door was, but I have to pee. At that, I was snickering to myself. I locked the door and drove the 45 minutes out to Ken's house to let him know that the shop was closed. Now, could I have gone the 5 minutes to my house and called? Sure, I could have. But did I? No. Ken did seem a bit surprised to see me there. He says, hey, I thought you were working today. I say to him, oh, I was, but Amanda fired me. To which Ken says, she's not allowed to do that. All the hiring and firing goes through me. She knows that. Don't worry, I'm gonna call her. I think maybe it's time to talk to my son about her. I can't keep her on with her acting like this. And that's when I tell Ken, I don't think she'll be able to answer the phone, sir. That's when Ken gives me a long, sharp look as I tried very hard not to smile. Then I gave up entirely and just smiled broadly back at him and he says, OP, what? What did you do? I tell him, me? I didn't do a thing. I was only following her orders. Ken then leaned down to meet me eye to eye and he says, what happened? I give him the full tale, from her telling me that I couldn't use the phone under any circumstances, to her telling me that I wasn't even allowed to leave the sales floor when I was on the clock, even to use the restroom. I then told him about her being stuck in the elevator. And Ken asked, you didn't tell her the elevator was broken? I tell him I didn't even realize it had power. At that, Ken just stands there looking at me gobsmacked, and then he starts laughing. He then says, I should really go let her out. He then pauses for a minute. He looks down at his dirty hands and clothes, and then back up at me. He then says, but I really shouldn't leave those flowers half planted. And then I should probably take a shower. I don't want to make that drive covered in dirt. I tell him, oh, of course not. You've got a really nice car. And it would be so much work to get that dirt out of your seat and carpets. At that, Ken nodded solemnly back at me and gave another chuckle. It probably took another hour to finish planting the flowers, and Ken told me I'd be paid for the day. He then sent me home with assurances that I did still indeed have my job, and that he would deal with Amanda. I fully enjoyed the rest of my half day off. I did end up hearing from Bill when he got there that the elevator repair guy had just arrived, and that Amanda ended up spending about 5 hours stuck in that elevator. After that day, I only ever saw her one more time, and she glared daggers at me as I waved happily to her as she carried a bag of her things out to her car. Whenever I think about it, I still get a little smile on my face. Besides, I only did what she told me to do. Guys, I just have to say that this is one of the most delicious malicious compliances that I've read on this channel. Like, it's so freaking satisfying. And guys, that's why you gotta be nice to people you work with. You never ever know when you might get stuck in an elevator and need help. So our fast food restaurant closes at midnight on Sundays, and around 11:15, we start transitioning to close to get ready for the delivery we get every Sunday. There's a process here where we play a game of how many fries do you think we're gonna sell in the last 45 minutes. And we put the bags of them up front because we know the delivery guy takes the last half hour of our shift like clockwork. And we can't access the big boxes of french fries due to the line of boxes and dollies and counting items, etc. Plus our manager specifically says not to go into the walk-in during the delivery. Not that we could anyway tonight. So I'm usually pretty good at guessing. And we had a car pull up who needs 2 large fries. So I dropped 4 large fries into the fryer, just in case another car pulls up. And it did. The second car pulls up and says, "Hi, I'd like a hamburger, large with fries, and I need those fries fresh." Now I was dumb enough to mention, well, today's your lucky day, because I just dropped some fries in right now. Hearing that, his increasingly pleasant response is, "I don't care about those fries. You better make me some new fries. Fresh. Don't give me those fries, make me some new ones." Now the guy was so rude, so enter malicious compliance. Now I could have just as easily given him the fries I just dropped because they take around 3 minutes to cook. But he clearly said he didn't want those fries, so what's a cook to do? Do I lie and say those are not the fries that they thought they were? I tell him it's gonna be a while on the new fries, and he waits. I clean the frosty machine, which is a 6-minute job, right in front of the window, and he waits. He then honks. I sincerely apologize and explain that the fries are inaccessible until the delivery driver can get everything moved. It shouldn't be that much longer, and then we can drop them. Maybe 10 minutes. So the guy waits 10 minutes, and I stock the nugget sauces, being mindful that I'm being watched like a hawk. So I pretend to look off in the middle distance of our restaurant, like there's something going on there. The guy waits some more. Finally, my coworker runs up with a box, and we toss them into the fry bin. All of a sudden, he honks more emphatically now, and I come up to the window to hear him yelling, "What? They're frozen? I wanted fresh." The guy then screeches off into the night with no food in sight. But alas, read him his rights. Just as the guy speeds off, an officer who's a regular pulls around and gives the fry guy a ticket for aggressive driving. I know this because the officer is a regular to the drive-thru, and he always pays for the person behind him. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today. If you did, hit that like button. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm gonna link it right here. A super and duper entitled Karen decides to steal from OP. And she calls 911 when OP puts up a fight. It's so crazy. So guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.